Next up is Beyond the Saddle. It's the final step in the rider's journey. There is an argument why we should deal with this last, because it is the final step. There's an argument why we should deal with it first, because it's something that the riders need to think about from the outset. But in terms of our panel here, I am scrambling for notes as I do it. Who have we got? Jeff Gomez, I'm going to invite forward first. Jeff is the Performance and Lifestyle and Dual Career Specialist at Sport Career Institute. He's going to be looking at the identity of a jockey, how they look at themselves as just being a jockey. Also going to ask Bill Ridderford to step forward. He's the Wellbeing and Transition and Support Specialist working with jockeys in Australia, and he works on an evidence-based approach towards athlete transition and training, and he's going to be looking at structural end career support. Phil Kinsella from Jets, former jump jockey, and is always promoting interests away from racing, and to be joined by Tom Scudamore, who at this stage probably doesn't need an introduction. So can you welcome the panel, Bill, Phil, Jeff and Tom, as we take the final steps towards Beyond the Finish Post.
Good afternoon. Thanks for inviting me to present on this topic. And I fully understand that this topic to some of you might be controversial. This topic is about dual career, how to put dual career into the life of a jockey. Up to a couple of years ago, I didn't know anything about horse racing. And I came into this world and my first reaction was like, this is mental. This is crazy. To give you a bit of understanding about my background, I did my PhD on student athlete in Ireland, the way student athletes are able to combine sports and academic. I worked as a performance manager in a university to look after dual career athletes. I currently work at the Sport Island Institute, providing life skills and support to candidate athletes. So I thought I'd start, when I was researching on this presentation, I came across this quote, and I thought it would be useful to frame the conversation with this quote. And this quote from a very famous Irish jockey, Robbie Walsh. I've been around in the racing world long enough to see the high and lows. So while it didn't shock me, it did upset me. And the thing is, when you start looking at the stats, it's really, and at the research, it's really prevalent that we need a holistic support. Currently, we have 79% of jockeys who have a threshold for at least one common mental disorder. This is a research from Lewis King in 2021, and 57% of jockeys meet the criteria for depression, and 61% experience adverse alcohol use, which is significantly higher than any other sport. And these transfer into the reality of just a jockey identity. And it's something that, just to kind of carry the conversation that started yesterday with the conversation with Kira and Michael and Karen in terms of the sole identity of a jockey. What you have is, it's a very, I think I can all agree, it's a very unique and demanding profession. There's a high risk of severe injuries. I mean, for someone who used to look after soccer players, rugby players, sailors, when I came across into this world, I was like, this is mental. We're not talking about pulling a hamstring here. I think the first and the second consultation that I had with a jockey, the guy was in a neck brace. I was like, what is that? And you have long, very long and existing exhaustive working hours. And there's something as well, something that really shocked me is a study in 2021, there was, so bear in mind this is Irish data, on a sample of 84 professional jockeys, 56% reported finishing at 15 years of age. They had a junior cert and then they dropped out of school. 30% completed a living cert, and 11% reached third-level education. The consequence is you end up with very narrow, singular professional identity, which means that there's a very high vulnerability when there is an injury. When that injury, suddenly the sole identity of the athlete is, I am a jockey. When there is an injury and they're being sidelined, who are they? Which brings us to the next slide, which is the career model, a holistic framework for resilience. So if you're not fully familiar with this model, the dual career model basically integrates sports, so high performance sport, and you combine it with education, could be going to third level, or vocational training, being apprenticeship, or an alternative career path. And the great thing about this support is you enhance the support structure available to you as an athlete and as a student. And I'm sure the psychologists in the room will be familiar with this framework. This framework was designed by sport psychologist Paul Wilman from the university in Belgium. And what you're looking at here is basically you're looking at a full span of an athlete's life from the moment, the start of the career to the end of the career. And there's going to be 3 different themes throughout the development. You have the psychological, which is development of identity and autonomy. You have the psychosocial, relationship with peers, coaches, and you've got the academic. And the thing in the racing world, everything is so reliant on one thing, which is the athletic identity, that when you have an injury, everything collapses. And what we could do is, you could tell me, Jeff, this is all very nice, beautiful graph. What is data saying regarding student athlete? And there's a study conducted in 2019 by Paul Wilman, looking over the couple of years across 9 countries. They interviewed 3,000 student athletes, and they found out that student athletes develop those competencies. They've got an ability to cope with stress. They have perseverance during challenging time. They understand the importance of rest and recuperation. And so, in a nutshell, being a student athlete makes you a better athlete. It's better, why? Because there's a dual identity there, not a sole identity. And over the next couple of slides, bear in mind, this is some of the key learning of the dual career ecosystem, what you can apply into the jockey world. And basically, that's dual career ecosystem rely on 4 pillars: a holistic approach, mental health literacy, an integrated support environment, and a proactive career transition management. So for example, for the first pillar, it's very important to see the whole person, not just the athlete, not just the jockey, but what is the life career? So many times I have a conversation with a jockey that is injured and comes to me and says, Jeff, I'm out for 3 months. Okay, what do you want to do? I want to do a course. Why? Because I'm injured. Okay, who do you see yourself be in 1 year time? A jockey. Okay, there's a stat out there that's saying for athletes, 1 in 3 decide to retire. That means 2 out of 3 are forced to retire, which means that if you don't have a plan B, you're going to have serious problems. So it's always very good to embed at the start of the career to have a plan B and to start thinking about, okay, you're a whole person, not just an athlete. The second thing is build knowledge to build resilience. Mandate early exposure. What I mean by that is learn to manage finances as a jockey, learn how to build a CV, learn how to communicate, learn if so many times when I'm talking to a jockey, I say, okay, do you have a CV? I don't. Why? I don't know. Those are basic skills that should be starting very, very early into an athlete career. Ensuring access to knowledge. So many times there's a misconception that going back to university means going back to uni 9 to 5. This is 2025, soon 2026. There's many, many options available to athletes to study online. For example, in Ireland, if you are a cadet athlete, if you're a student athlete, if you're competing in the States and you have an exam to do, you can do your exams in the States. You can access your lectures online. There's multiple options out there for talented athletes to combine a dual career. Create a trusted and integrated support environment, and I know we had so many different conversations throughout the last days and today, and it's already happening. And there's one thing though, is we need to bring trainers to the table and owners, because it's not good enough to talk to jockeys and say, okay, you need a dual career approach. They still need to ride the horse. And if they go to the trainer and say, I have to go and study, the trainer's like, okay, next. Okay, we're gonna bring on the next jockey. It's very important to educate trainers on the importance of dual career. And the last pillar is, and I'll briefly go on to that, it's normative transition versus non-normative transition. Everything that you do, everything that you begin to do will have an end. Everything that you start will finish, always. And we need to educate jockey on the predictable stage. If you start, you will finish. You will retire. Do you want to retire on your own terms? Or at some point or another, you will be forced to retire. What is your plan B? What skills do you have? And to finish, I would like to finish on those 3 points. And those points are just a topic for conversation. Better people make better jockeys. Research is showing over time, over and over again, that dual career give you, well, basically you have lower burnout rates, longer career, and a better life satisfaction. We need to stop treating education as a distraction. Educating people is empowering people. And the last point is we need to empower jockey to define their own future. So many times jockeys are forced into retirement. We need to start from an early age to empower them to decide. When they decide to step out, they know what to do. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Bill Ritterford. I work in athlete wellbeing and career development in Australia. Today, my specific focus area is on the final transition. As Jeff just mentioned, every one of our jockeys is going to go through this. It's just a fact. So it's really important that we address it and see how, as a racing community, that we can make sure that we're hitting the mark in this particular space. Importantly, just like career development is one part of holistic athlete development, end of career is just one transition point. Jockeys navigate many transitions throughout their lives. This final one simply happens to be the one where support is often at the weakest. Why this matters is pretty simple, really. Jockeys experience a completely different career structure than many other athletes that I've worked with and that we've all worked with over various stages. They start extremely young, their identity forms around racing early, their risk profile is high, and their career length is unpredictable, sometimes ending suddenly. All of this means that when change happens, especially at the end of a career, they're often underprepared both personally and professionally. It's important to view transition as a constant in a jockey's life, not just at retirement. Transitions happen through injury, graduating from apprentice to senior rider, changes in form, relocation. We heard Holly talk about the differences coming from the UK to Hong Kong and some of the challenges that she faced at that stage as well. Weight fluctuations, contract changes, major life events. How a jockey handles each one of these earlier transitions actually influences how well they handle their final one. So end of career support isn't an isolated service. It should be the end point of a much earlier developmental pathway. When riding stops, whether by choice, injury or circumstance, jockeys lose more than just their occupation. They lose routine, community, status, physical rhythm, and the sense of identity that you've heard a lot about over the last couple of days. And for many, that shift happens abruptly. A structured, predictable transition process helps ensure the end of riding doesn't feel like a cliff. I've worked for around 6 years working with jockeys in Australia. What I consistently saw was many jockeys who officially retired often returned to racing because it was the only world they understood. Their identity was deeply tied to racing, making it difficult to imagine alternatives. Exposure to broader pathways usually came too late. At the moment, they were already leaving. This reactive approach creates anxiety, uncertainty, and sometimes unhealthy cycling in and out of the sport. Research tells us the same story across all sports. When athletes receive early, structured transition support, they experience better wellbeing, stronger performance, and healthier post-career options and outcomes. But when support arrives late or not at all, we see high levels of burnout, anxiety, depression, and poor preparedness for life after sport. This aligns with major studies that I've been involved with the Australian Institute of Sport and Deakin University, and various other international athlete transition literature. So what makes a good transition, or what makes a good transition support look like? Effective transition support has 4 key components. I'm sure many jurisdictions do some of these. If you do them all, gold star to you. But I'm sure, as I said, some jurisdictions already do parts of these. Early exposure, developing life skills, identity beyond sport, and awareness of future pathways well before a jockey retires. Personalised planning, helping each rider plan for education, work, lifestyle transitions that fit their strengths and their interests. Access to wellbeing support, specifically psychological support that recognises the emotional complexities of career transition. And a fourth one that we probably don't recognise as much is the ongoing connection to the industry, for those, especially for those that are interested. Keeping former riders connected to the sport as mentors, coaches, educators and leaders. When I designed the transition support process for the Australian Lawn Bowls Commonwealth Games team, the goal for me was twofold. It was to support athletes exiting our high performance program and reintegrating into the real world, and to maintain a longer term connection to the sport. I've also worked in cricket where the transition process is the first 12 months they work with their individual state, and then the Players Association works with that cricket player for the following 2 years after that. So they have 3 years of structured transition support after their retirement or losing their contracts. This connection allows athletes to remain involved as mentors, coaches, leaders, or talent specialists. Racing has the same opportunity, and arguably a greater need, because the sport often struggles to attract and retain skilled people. This isn't just a wellbeing issue, it's a strategic one. When jockeys transition well, racing benefits. The industry retains knowledge. Ex-jockeys become mentors, coaches, stewards, industry staff. It supports workforce stability in an industry that can struggle to attract and keep people. And it proves to future athletes and families that racing takes care of its people. A strong transition system strengthens the entire racing ecosystem. It's no single organisation or country that owns this problem. Transition is a shared responsibility. It starts with the jockey. It is their responsibility. But it's also with racing bodies, trainers, support staff and the wider community. But the principle remains the same everywhere. Every jockey deserves a clear, supported, dignified path into life after racing. The framework can be universal, the delivery can be locally tailored. My closing message, this is why end of career transition matters. It's not just a welfare issue, it's a human one. When jockeys finish riding, they deserve more than uncertainty. They deserve structure, support, and a clear sense of what comes next. That's why I'm committed, and I've spoken to Jeff about it, to helping any jurisdiction that wants to build these programs. The pathways exist, and when they're done well, they change lives. With the right structures, this isn't an aspiration, it's achievable for every racing nation. Thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to the discussion with my fellow panellists shortly.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me. My name is Phil Kinsella. I'm Personal Development Manager for Jets. and Jets are the Jockeys Education and Training Scheme. Traditionally, if anyone's been keeping an eye on the Racing Post the last couple of days, you'll see an article about sort of the inception of Jets, and Jets were traditionally the Jockeys Employment Training Scheme, and Michael might be able to tell us a bit about that a little bit later. But that conversation was basically that employment word meant there was secret meetings. People didn't want to be seen talking to Jets, didn't want to be seen thinking they were going to retire. My position was funded by the Racing Foundation, and at a similar sort of time we changed the name to Jockeys Education. That education word basically represents our commitment to jockeys from the very start of their careers, rather than that employment word that suggests we're just there for sort of at the very end, really. Now, as a former jockey going into that personal development manager role, I think it would have been very, very easy for me to be, stood in front of however many sort of 16, 17, 18-year-olds and say, right, you will get injured, you will retire. Like, what are you going to do then? When you're 18, are you immortal? Are you, what's the word? You're never going to get to 30. And then when you're 30, you're never going to get to 40. So I'd like to think we've just kind of developed something a little bit, a softer approach. So I introduced myself on the Jockeys Licence course, and job one, message one, go and be the absolute best jockey that you can be. And how do you do that? Well, you use that by using the help and support around you, use your jockey coach, use the nutrition, use the Inter Jockeys Fund for your fitness, mental health support is there, sports psychology support is there, come and do your communication, presentation, media training. Give yourself the best opportunity to go and be the best jockey that you can be, and I'm there to support that. We do a set of personal development plan where we set goals and targets, and we visualise our achievements, and that has knock-on to our sort of motivation and dedication. But the second half of that delivery is all about kind of holistic life support. Be a person. And I was delighted, session 1 yesterday, talking about have an identity away from the races. Let's set some life goals. Let's think about it. No, you've never thought about it as an 18-year-old, but let's have a little think about it. Where do you see yourself kind of alongside racing or after racing? Let's have a look at your finances, your confidence. Have you a sense of community? What are your interests and your hobbies? Dead easy. Interests and hobbies. So that first point of contact is that kind of impressions that I need to be 100% into racing, otherwise I'm going to fail as jockey, whereas actually you need to be 90% in and 10% into something else. Have an hour off. Go and give it a go. Go and be the best you can be. Aren't we all the same? If I'm giving you guys the worst 8 minutes, please be 8 minutes, of the 2 days, what am I going to do about it? Am I going to go back to the room, just rock myself to sleep in a dark room? Have I got something else to do, on the way, when I get there? Go somewhere, do something else. And that kind of, just such a simple conversation. So therefore, can I, give me your interest, give me your hobby. Can we, or we can turn that into an education or a training course? And that leads us into that kind of dual career element of the delivery, whereby it's not kind of then what you're going to do, it's what we're going to do as well, what we're going to do alongside. So we take that pressure off needing that to go well at the races kind of thing. So we're really, really fortunate. Part of the jockey training and development strategy from the BHA run by the British Racing School, and Jets deliver on that as a kind of integral part of the curriculum. So what that basically means is we have mandatory claiming workshops for the jockeys. I see them on the licence course. I then see them 1 year from that point, and then again. So the workshops come back on 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 years, and that structure then allows me to alter that delivery and strengthen that message, sort of as they work away through their claim. So those workshops will goal setting, self-awareness, and dual career. Tell me about yourself in 30 seconds. Don't tell me you're a jockey. Exactly. Absolute silence. It feels like I've just been punched somewhere naughty. And that's exactly the response. But it's almost like one of the most satisfying points of my job. Half an hour later, all of a sudden I've got someone exactly the same question. oh yeah, I am quite adventurous, I am quite social. Actually, I do want to learn a bit about that, and I do want to learn more about that. And all of a sudden, you've just got that self-awareness, and we can add in that dual career bit as well. And that then allows me to evolve a little bit further into transferable skills, recognise the life stages that you've come through, recognise what you learned from that point. And that could be anything. It could be your first job, it could be your primary school. What did you learn from that? Just try and become conscious of, I've come through these stages, and actually I'm probably going to go through stages as well, so how can I best prepare for that bit going forward? Now, let me just introduce you to Tom Brown. I rang Tom and said, can I take you to Hong Kong? And he got very, very excited. Not so much when I told him it was just part of the PowerPoint presentation. So that's my fault for just, I think I got that message a bit wrong, I think. But Tom was an apprentice with Andrew Balding, won the John Smith Cup, very, very successful. I think he was second in the apprentice title one year, probably his own admission maybe could have won that year. Had a meeting with Tom and sort of chatted about his kind of transferable skills, what he enjoyed about being a jockey. Turns out he'd gone quite far through the sort of fire service recruitment, but a knee injury stopped going that. So all of a sudden we had a sort of a direction that was basically kind of, well, I don't need to read all these out, but for Tom like specifically, well, he liked going somewhere different every day. He liked working outside, he liked working with people, he had resilience, he was excellent communication, such a people person. All of a sudden, kind of, we had an opportunity to go and investigate something. So you'll see there you notice he's sort of gone into the ambulance service. But there was even like more sort of added satisfaction to that, even sort of better than that even. Like problem solving comes across, is that like when you're riding, you've got to work out a poor performance and you go through a process? Is what sorts that? Is the track, is it the ground, was it the trip, was it the day, was it the left-handed, was it a bend? Like working out all this sort of stuff. Is that how dissimilar is that to working out an unresponsive person? Now I'm apologise for this next part. You'll be very obvious I've no medical training, but I'm sure that process is my knee bone's connected to the thigh bone. The thigh bone's, is that right? That's what you do? Yeah. I thought so. So he's got that problem solving process. Someone unresponsive, right? Where do I start? What do I need to go through? Even positivity to owners, convincing them that your horse didn't run that badly. I promise. Is that reassuring for someone who's worried about in the back of an ambulance? It seems like a million miles apart, but all of a sudden Tom had this absolute epiphany, and away you go, sort of thing. Loves helping people. Sometimes owners and trainers do say thank you. Tom? Sometimes maybe. So you get that little buzz of helping someone. And then the added thing again, where's your adrenaline coming from? Well, when the blue light's on, what we're going to come across, what's going to happen when we get there. So all of that kind of combined, not a million miles away from to that riding a win, and gets that sort of satisfaction and that identity that we're looking for. Society has this kind of what's your name and what do you do. So all of a sudden it's kind of like, I know I used to be a jockey until I started working for Jets, and all of a sudden that's my new identity, and that's the kind of thing that we're trying to do really. That conversation could have been Alan Daly, who went into the fire service. I thought of Alan yesterday, where he went actually into the specialist animal rescue part of the fire service. So horse falls down a hole, he knows which end bites and which end kicks. He knows where the safe part is. Something so simple, but actually no one has to teach him how to reassure a horse in a hole, or whatever situation he's in. So just to kind of recap, the Jets contacts, we see them on licence course, we see the workshops once a year. I would send them postcards to remind their goals, organic meetings at the races, or in the Jockeys Fund centres, phone calls and texts at least every 6 months, but it's very, very much be the best jockey you can be, and then what else can we kind of add to it? And never ever sort of, it's always like a dual career. It's always like, let's do that as well, rather than instead of. So really fortunate, the structure allows me to kind of had contact before, during, and after their careers, and sort of establish that relationship kind of throughout, so it's not kind of just on them at the end kind of thing. So, thank you.
Hello, I'm Tom Scudamore, and you've seen and heard far too much of me in the last 2 days. We've got 8 more minutes. Can I just apologise before I even begin, because this is my first ever PowerPoint, and I'm going to address the... I've gone the wrong way round. There we go. Press the green button. I'm going to address the stigmas in and around career change rather than the retirement. When a jockey comes to the end of his racing career, it's not the retirement, it's just a career change. And there is stigmas attached to it. We've all seen it. Everybody aspires to be a champion. Every leading rider in every racing nation is described as this. Champions are the ultimate role model, and their will to win is extra, above everybody else. Every jockey has to have total focus. Riding winners is an all-encompassing obsession. All the riders that we love and admire and have won us money over the years all have these qualities, and that's something, as a jockey, you're always aspiring to be. The trainers that you ride for, you're being told from an early age, you're not working as hard as that champion. When the previous apprentice was in the yard, he was unbelievable. He never took mornings off. He never took evenings off. He was all encompassed by being a rider and being the best you can be. If you have any outside interests, you do not care. Look at so-and-so. He lives and breathes the sport. Well, that's not necessarily true. Look at all these leading riders from all around the world, and they've all got a different array of talents. Mick Cannan and Willie Carson, both while riding, had enormous success breeding racehorses. Mick Cannan bred a Derby winner while he was still riding in 2007 with Authorised, and Willie Carson bred a St Leger winner in Minster Sun. Christophe Soumillon has an academy to teach the champions of the future. John Frankham was 7 times UK champion jump jockey and was a successful entrepreneur whilst riding, including a string of fish and chip shops, racing thrillers, and plenty of other things. Richie Cloran, he'd be a name you wouldn't have heard for, but he did as well as he could do riding. He achieved all he can do, and very sensibly, since he's retired, he's gone on to become a global equity analyst. And Harry Cobden runs a farm. He rides for a very demanding trainer, and every time that said trainer gives him a rollicking or tells him off, Harry goes and buys another cow. We all have transferable skills, as Phil touched upon. Discipline, not only is making weight, is what we've talked about all week, but unlike any other sport, things aren't going to wait for us. If a team bus gets stuck on the way to the rugby or to the football, they'll push the times back. We have to turn up on time and at the right time. The communication, explaining to owners what went right, and more unfortunately, most of the time, what went completely wrong. Strategic thinking, having a mind of how the race is going to pan out. And then the adaptability in decision-making and split seconds when the strategic thinking that you've had and all the lead up to the race promptly goes out the window. The opportunity. When you're riding from a very early age, you are the CEO of your own business. From the age of 18 or even younger, when many others are being apprentices in other walks of life or still at university, you are in charge of your own business and your own destiny. Most are small, very few are the conglomerates like Ryan Moore or Mike Smith or Zach Purton, but you have that opportunity there to build your own business. You are in charge of that. So you've got to prepare for change, and statistically, you won't get to choose. Now, I'm the perfect example of a jockey, not because my grandfather and father were jockeys before me, but really, I was the right height, I had good access to ponies from an early stage, and I got to ride horses around a field. And because of that opportunity I was given, I've managed to get here today, go all around the world following my dream. But I didn't get, statistically, I didn't get to choose to retire. I was one of the very fortunate ones that did. I remember my father telling me a story when him and John Frankham went out to ride in one of the final races of the season back in 1981. They're following a man called Bill Smith. And Bill Smith said that this is going to be his last ride. And Dad, with the inexperience of youth and the boldness, turned to John and said, "Poor old fool, he'll never ride again." And John turned around and said, "Well, how do you know this isn't your last ride?" So from that moment on, Dad was very aware that he wasn't going to necessarily get that choice, and he wanted to do things on his own terms. So he instilled that into me. And we're very fortunate now that we have so many things around us, like with Jets, to have that own opportunity. And as a jockey, you will meet and have access to an enormous pool of people, some of the most successful people in their chosen spheres. You've got to go out and meet them, go out and see them, go and tap into them. What else at a young age do you have that opportunity to meet so many wildly successful people? And not just from different sports, but from your own sport. You know, this is not just, everyone thinks going into it, they just want to be a jockey. But it's a huge industry, a huge opportunity, and so many different variables involved with it. Use all your time at your disposal and make good use of your time. I remember listening to Davy Russell. The one regret that he had from his entire enormously successful career is that the very little bit of free time he got, he didn't use it well enough. And that is something I can really believe in. And it's not just about being injured, it's about having other opportunities and other interests. And when you retire, you do lose your identity. I was a jockey for 25 years, and this is something that's very personal to me. I find it very hard. I was so used to those 25 years being Tom Scudamore, the jockey. I didn't know anything else. Even though I'd prepared, even though I'd done media courses, even though I was in a position where I could make my own choices and I could transition very smoothly, I found it very hard. So when you do lose your identity, you've got to have that new one on hand. And finally, you can take your father's advice. He's had a brilliant career, and I'm immensely proud of the way he backed up. He said to me yesterday, "Dad, I've had a bang on the head, and I don't want to do it anymore." I really admire that. Once you've done it for as long as him, you realise you're very privileged, and now he's got the responsibility to keep going and not end up down the pub. Unfortunately, however amusing I found that, since becoming a trustee of the Injured Jockeys Fund, I've realised that far too many do end up going down that road, and it's up to us as an industry to guide them on the right path. Thank you very much indeed.
Tom, I wasn't going to begin with you, but I am, because just the way you touched on it there, the point I want to take out of what you said was the connections you have the potential to make. You're meeting people who have, if you're a racehorse owner, you probably have a little bit of, you've had success in life, you're maybe in a position to give people opportunities. There's something in that we can prepare riders even at that stage for meeting those people and being able to engage with those people.
Yeah, it's vitally important. I remember listening to Steve Cawthon. Obviously a phenomenally successful jockey. He conquered America and came over and conquered Europe. And when you walk into the paddock, he spoke about that importance of you have 2 minutes with somebody and to make that impression. And for those 2 minutes, you could be riding for Shakes, you could be riding for Coolmore, you could be riding for all sorts of different, varied, wonderful people. What an opportunity to tap into that. Now, you're not going to make great contacts with all of them. You might go out and give it a rubbish ride and they never want to see you again. But the chances are, in order to have a racehorse, in order to have something in training, you have such an opportunity to meet such a varied people, varied existence. And so few people in life have that opportunity. And as a rider, whether you're an apprentice or whether you're a senior rider, you get that opportunity. And I think it's something that people so easily overlook.
But to that point, you will lose 90% of the time. So if we can begin to educate these riders, let me put this a different way. There are a number of riders who you would feel didn't maximise their potential because they weren't good communicators. And there are a number of riders who you might simply say that they probably did better than you thought their ability would do. That ability to communicate is something we really need to hone in on because it's a transferable skill.
Yeah, but there's also, I've always felt that the best riders, there's a balance. And I think the main thing to be a successful rider, and you can measure success anyway, but to achieve your potential, you need to be disciplined, you need to be polite. And I've met people, some of the top jockeys are extremely disciplined. I can think of 2 extremely disciplined, some of the best I've ever ridden, that aren't polite at all. So that's how good you've got to, if you're just going to be disciplined and not polite, you've got no chance. If you're polite and not disciplined, we've seen plenty of them, plenty of lovely lads that don't turn up at 9 o'clock don't turn up to ride out, etc. So they don't use that chances and those opportunities. So yeah, I think that's the thing to really hammer home, not just about that communication, but to be disciplined, to be polite, and the world can be your oyster.
Bill, we've talked about this panel a couple of times over the last couple of days. 2 things, and we are on the clock as always. So it is something we need to begin at the beginning with, and from the beginning of the rider's journey. But also, I think and I will come to you, Phil, in a moment about the other interests. But is there opportunity within upskilling the riders to be good riders with skills that they will be able to transfer? So I suppose what I mean by that is, you introduce them to accountancy through what they'll need to do with their tax returns or through analysing form. You introduce them to communication for the owner, knowing they'll need it somewhere else. Do we almost trick them into the skills and begin at the beginning? And I'll get to you on the other interests in a moment. But how do we get the riders to buy in if they are 18, they're risk takers, and they'll never be 35? It won't matter.
Yeah, I think accessing this sort of stuff as early as possible is key. Even as first-year apprentices, I think we can provide some very basic education around it. I'm not sure who it was yesterday had a really good graphic of the jockey and the amount of networks that they're attached to one horse. I don't know if any apprentice academies actually show that diagram in their training. And I think that's where you can almost trick them into it and say, look at all these connections that you're going to make through racing. And then as an apprentice, I'm sure, not that I was ever a jockey, obviously, but if you can show them the potential pathways of maybe making them more a successful jockey, but in the background we know that they're just actually developing transferable skills.
But we have to begin when they get the licence before that.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Jeff, we are beginning that a little bit. There's signs that that's the direction we're heading, if you want to expand on it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at it. In Ireland, we've been very fortunate to have very successful athletes combining academics and sport. For example, a rugby player, Felipe Cantepomi, the Argentine rugby coach. When he was playing for Leinster, he finished his studies as a doctor. We have Paul O'Donovan, which was a lightweight rower, who won gold at the Japan Olympics and in Tokyo and in Paris. And at the same time as competing at the highest level, he won 7 world championships. He was studying in UCC to be a doctor. So those people are combining, around a volume of 200 kilometers rowing on the water every week. And then at the same time, he's studying to be a doctor. So there is a specific approach. It takes a village to raise someone. And of course, the sole responsibility cannot lie on the universities. He has to be the federations, it has to be universities, it has to be the athletes, and everyone has to play their part. But you have to start early.
But we have to be cognizant of, if these are 15 or 16, I think it was you mentioned it, we have maybe a disproportionate number of school leavers.
Yes.
That empowerment message, to give them the confidence that maybe coming into other sports, maybe they don't leave school quite so early and they've seen that vision. Maybe jockeys haven't, or is that fair?
They obviously leaving school for a reason. And it would be wrong to them, stay in school, don't leave. I was like, who are you? Who are you to talk to me like that? I want to ride a horse, I want to be a jockey. And I think you need to reverse the approach and say, okay, what is your why? What do you want to do? And to create a space when you have that conversation, and I really like the approach of Michael of the bench approach, and just to create a space to be, okay, what skills do you have? And do you understand that whatever your passion is, it will come to an end?
Phil, how much of this is another interest, and how much of it is educate them towards being the best they can be, knowing we'll transfer the skills?
Yes, I think it's a conversation about them becoming conscious of sort of what they want to do and where they want to go. I think probably one of a regular conversation is where I want to be champion apprentice, champion conditional, champion jockey. There's no right and wrong answers. I want to win 10,000 races all around the world. Great. If you're interested in bloodstock and breeding, right, well, just become conscious of what horses you're riding, and go to the sales when the sales run. Go with the trainer. Realise that scorpions don't win left-handed on a Tuesday, and bring that into your...
They don't win right-handed on a Wednesday either. Yeah. But that's my point. I mean, if we bring the maths out through the handicap system, through the time form analysis, that we show them how it can benefit them as jockeys, but we know beyond that, it will never come against them. I think that's really what you're saying there, is it?
Yes, it's something that goes very much alongside, rather than finish riding on the Monday, start something on the Tuesday.
Yes.
It's already started. You've already had those conversations about the breeding. You've already gone to the sales. You've already made those contacts. And you're doing that It's not taking anything away from your riding. It's benefited your riding, because those conversations that you're having with your owners, all of a sudden there's a connection. Oh yeah. Oh well, will you come to the sales with me? And that happens. It's so easy. Just become conscious of what you're doing.
We've talked a lot over the last 2 days about, riders are becoming aware of concussion, aware of injuries, aware of strength and conditioning. Not to be negative, but this is the one I'm most concerned about, that to be that ultimate risk taker, can you allow yourself to be aware of the afterlife? Can we really expect them to? Or, as I say, Bill, you've worked with plenty of these guys. Can they transition at the age of 16, 17, 18 to saying, I also need to be worried about the age of 35, even though I'm going out to ride at 35 mile an hour tomorrow? Is it realistic to really think they'll latch into it as quickly as the concussion?
Probably the elite athletes that I've dealt with, the ones that are so driven like that, it is very hard to educate them on this sort of stuff early days. Yeah. I think it does get to a stage where there is a moment in their career where they start to think about it. But is it too late? No. I think as long as they've got the awareness of what's available to them and that you're going to educate them, just gradually educate them all the way through and be there for when they need you. So you're not going to be able to get 100% engagement with it. So it's important that at least they know what the services are, what the support's available to them, so that then when that time does come, yeah, you do have to have it. Is that ideal? No. But you'll find a majority of riders would actually engage in this service a lot earlier.
Tom, how early could we have persuaded you to look at the future?
Yeah, well, we had this conversation in the bus yesterday. And when I wanted to leave home at 16 and my parents stopped me. Obviously it helped that Dad had been a jockey and my grandfather had been a jockey. But all the successful jockeys I know and rode with, you mentioned Ruby Walsh, he went all the way through education. Richard Dunwoody went all the way through education. Nico de Bonneville started off university education. A lot of the top jockeys, those role models, have gone through and attained good education. And I think that is something we have to promote. So we're turning around to those 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds and saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. You're not going to be champion jockey tomorrow. But what will definitely happen is that you will have another career after this. No matter how much successful you are, you're going to have to go and get a proper job at some point, which my grandmother always used to tell me, when you're going to get a proper job. And I think the engagement, when we're talking about all these things, I think we've missed one ingredient that is extremely important. And at the ages that we're talking about is that engagement with people's parents as well. Now, maybe some of the 16-year-olds are coming from disadvantaged backgrounds where the parents aren't there. But I think we have to engage their parents as well in order to give them the guidance that what we're hoping to give them.
And I think we're starting to see that with licenses as new license holders come along, this continuous learning that they have to. I think we do a little bit of that in Ireland, Jeff, where they have to log into various different courses during the course of the year. They can be at home on their phones. Nobody's going to ask them a question. They're not going to feel intimidated. That's already begun.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great process that in order to get your license, you must get X amount of points. And you can get only those points if you engage with...
Annually. You must do it every year.
That's it, every year.
Yeah.
If you engage with support services. So there's no point, kind of ducking and diving and hoping that everything will be fine. You need to get points. You have to engage.
Yes.
And I think it's a mix between, the carrot and the stick. And at a young age, it's very hard sometimes to have a conversation to be like, okay, in 10, 15 years' time, what kind of house do you want? What kind of cars do you want? Do you want a goldfish or, something like that? And it's very hard for 18, 20 years old to contextualize that, but to slowly embrace the pathway, slowly to kind of engage with support staff, to develop your project, to develop what is really your why. Who do you want to be when you retire? Rome wasn't built in a day. It takes time.
Bill?
Yeah, Richard, I just want to raise a point that Tom just spoke about parent education. And I always tell this story. In my time at cricket, my role at cricket was called a player development manager. So basically I looked after the athletes outside of the field, making sure their welfare was fine, and dealt with some really interesting times, especially with an Australian Test captain for those cricket followers. But I remember we had this young guy come down from New South Wales in Australia to Tasmania, where I was based, and he was about 18 or 19, and I got his parents to come down so that they could meet his new environment, the head coach, the assistant coach, the batting coach, strength and conditioning, the physios, and me. And So the dad came around and big cricket follower, and he wrapped to meet the head coach, and then was wrapped to meet the batting coach. His son could bowl left hand and right hand, so he was a very special player. Got to my point of my turn and sat across the table from him and said, "Okay, this is what I do." And his dad leaned over. He said, "He's not speaking to you for 2 years." And I just thought, "Oh, that's great. I've come from education where you can't really sort of fight back too hard." And I'm like, "Look, I respect that, but it's an expectation in this program." And I had that backing from the coach to say, "No, he will be speaking to me tomorrow and for the next 2 years and for the next however long his career goes for." So I think where the parent education can come into it, especially for non-racing families, if the industry gets behind it to say, yes, this stuff is expected right from day one of the apprenticeship academy, and it continues on. But if we sort of only do it a bit half-assed, to be honest, and it's just a bit of a dabble here and a dabble there, and it's a service that you can access, it's going to take us a long time to get that traction.
Phil, final word from you.
Yeah, I just think we need to sort of shift the goalpost, I suppose. It's rather than feel like, you know, let's get rid of this kind of retirement word. Let's sort of, you're doing it at the same time. You want to. There's a perfect example. A chap. You're right. He works for a trainer in Wales, really supported by this trainer. So he rides out all morning. Then he goes and he's a farming contractor on the afternoon, and he's supported by that trainer. So sell that benefit. Sell that benefit of earning money all morning. And if you're racing, go and earn money in the races. And then all of a sudden, you're not racing tomorrow, so go and earn money in your tractor. Why not be in property development? You can do it at the same time. It's not do that and then do that. One day you'll have to do something else. That you can't sell that. That's not a benefit. You don't sell that as a benefit. Sell the good. Like go and do 2 jobs in a day. Earn loads of money. Just carry on doing that.
That's it. We have a motivational speaker here. I think we will continue this discussion, but we can't do it now. So I think the best way to do it is Bill is on the themed table around stigma and challenges with a dual career. So if you want to continue this discussion, we haven't the time to do it now, but you can do it that way. So Bill will be looking at exploring the practical challenges jockeys face in balancing racing with education. So there is a chance to continue this discussion. Elaine Burke will be looking at jockey coaching, the coaching supports and the jockey skill development, performance and career longevity. So there's an opportunity to look at that with Elaine. Injury surveillance, Rosie Hyman will look at that. Standardised injury surveillance, and it can improve data quality. That's a session we had to move through quite quickly. So deviate back to that if it suits. Profiling the jockey as an athlete, that's Danny Haig looking at the physical and performance profiling that can better define the jockey. And Arthur Dunn will be looking at body composition and bone health, the body composition. Ciara Losty looking at mental health, identifying those challenges, early intervention, and her mechanism, I think, that we've referred to a couple of times around being there for them when you want them, but you can't overpress. You've got to be there only when they're ready. And concussion and baseline testing with James Murray. He'll be understanding concussion management and baseline testing, although I think he told us the trick to baseline testing. So I'm not sure if you need to go to that table. I think he's given us all we need to know. So they're the themed tables. We need you to clear these tables, go behind us, fill those tables, come back and spend 20 minutes going through the questions that we need answers to, and we'll give you 20 minutes to do that. Thank you.